Imagine you are in an old hospital and you start to get a strange feeling. It feels as if something is watching you and you see shadows passing by. This is a common experience people have had when visiting Waverly Hills Sanatorium. Waverly Hills Sanatorium was a hospital in Louisville, Kentucky that treated tuberculosis patients and is now considered as a haunted hospital that you can tour. It started off as a school building until the hospital board bought the property and turned it into a hospital building. There was no real cure at first for tuberculosis, which resulted in thousands of deaths. Waverly Hills is now open to the public as a way to raise money for the betterment of the building. A lot of people come out with haunted stories. Waverly Hills is a historical place that altered the future that we are living in now. It affected the state that we live in and maybe even us by controlling the disease and helping the affected population. I first heard about Waverly Hills from a friend in high school. She actually toured the hospital not too long ago and told me all about her experience, so I decided to research the history of the hospital and what it is like now. There was an outbreak of tuberculosis in the 20th century or the 1900s, which resulted in the building of Waverly Hills. According to Serene, by the 20th century, tuberculosis was sweeping the United States and Louisville was particularly hard hit. The land that was bought for Waverly Hills previously held a school building named Waverly School. The hospital board changed the name to Waverly Hills Sanatorium, and construction finished July 26, 1910. The sanatorium only housed 40 to 50 people at first until remodeling in 1926, and then housed around 400 patients. Patients were contained into these facilities away from others and were treated by hospital staff. As Waverly Hills grew, so did the number of patients who were coming in, which made way for controversial treatments of the disease. In the beginning, the source of tuberculosis was not discovered and there was not a cure or remedy. Doctors and nurses had no idea what was causing this disease or how to help, so they performed various surgeries they thought would work. Things like blowing air into the lungs and taking out ribs were some of the things they did to collapse the bad part of the lung affected by the disease. Roughly 8,000 people died from 1911 to 1960. Patients were confined to the premises in hopes that they could stop the spread of the disease. The hospital was thought of as its own community because they had their own ways of living, their own livestock, and even their own postal code. In this picture, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see how the hospital is away from any other society or town, and it's kind of just out in the middle of nowhere. Although the hospital was there to help and treat patients, there were records showing people leaving against the doctor's advice. According to Finelli's study from 1939 to 1942, between 30 to 50% of patients left against the doctor's advice. Why? According to Finelli's research and interviews, there were several different reasons patients gave. Some of these were poor treatment, lonesomeness, financial insecurity, and boredom. Most patients left for several different reasons and not just one. As time passed by and new medicines and technology came into the picture, Waverly Hills Sanatorium was not needed any longer. After a vaccine for tuberculosis came out, cases dwindled down. This caused Waverly Hills Sanatorium to eventually die down, and it was no longer as imperative as it once was. Patients were relocated to other sanatoriums in Kentucky, and it closed in 1961. The hospital was eventually bought and used as a nursing home in 1963. The nursing home closed down in 1982, staying open for almost 20 years. It was shut down by the state of Kentucky due to patient abuse. Some of these patient spirits are said to roam the halls now. The people who finally bought Waverly Hills Sanatorium in 2001 used tours and other fundraisers to restore the building into good shape and to teach its history. A lot of people who go on these tours say the building is haunted and have stories to tell. One of these stories is about a little boy named Timmy. According to Lynn Wasser, Timmy was around 6 or 7 years old when he died in the hospital. Since he died with his whole life ahead of him, his spirit cannot move on and he wanders the hospital trying to have fun. Visitors often bring balls for him to play with, and many claim they see the balls moving, seemingly on their own. Believers in Timmy say it's him, while skeptics say the balls are moving thanks to either the wind or uneven flooring. Since we have journeyed through the history and stories of Waverly Hills Sanatorium, we can now reflect on what we have learned. Waverly Hills Sanatorium was a hospital in Louisville, Kentucky that treated tuberculosis patients, and is now considered as a haunted hospital that you can tour. It started off as a school building and was turned into a hospital due to rising numbers of tuberculosis cases in Kentucky. controversial practices and surgeries that were documented to cure. It could not stay open forever since a cure was made. Now you can go and tour the hospital yourself. Now that you all know the history of Waverly Hills, I encourage you to think about how it affected the population back in the 1900s. And if you are ever in that area, I encourage you to tour to help preserve the history that was created. Waverly Hills conveys feelings of hope and fear and reminds us that history is always